Hey guys.
How's
Hello.
everybody doing?
Hello, Dr. Harmony.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
My gosh, thank you for coming. Hey, this is like one of the probably only the second time where we've actually had somebody in
We're
a
talking to somebody
completely
from
different.
the future.
Yeah, we're talking somebody from the future. Yeah.
That's very
And actually,
cool,
the
isn't
other
it?
one was South Africa. I think that's the farthest we've
Yeah.
gotten so far.
I think so.
Yeah, a couple Europes, South Africa.
Yeah, we
and
just did a new Amsterdam, right?
Amsterdam. Yeah, we've had a bunch over in the Europe area, but that's not quite as different as you over in Australia.
No,
Yeah, that's
so
that's
mine
worth a
are very fuzzy.
tattoo, right? That's
Yeah.
worth a sparrow. Is that
Yeah.
a sparrow? What's the one where you cross the date line?
Yeah. So cool. Thank you for coming. I admittingly don't know much about this topic, and I'm super excited about learning more because like I've done yoga for years, and that's literally as close as I've got. So people talk about this a lot. There's a lot of like osmosis learning through this sort of proximity to these people, but like I've never sat down and been like, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Like just never, Tom nerds out on it every now and again with a guest, but
We have jokes where it's like, is this a Tom guest or is this a
Yeah.
Matt guest? And like
Yeah.
sometimes we'll book somebody for the other one, and I'm like, look,
yeah, right. Yeah.
and he's like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
But you're kind of in the sweet spot where, did you finish acupuncture school? Are you currently in school?
Yes, I'm an acupuncturist as well. But
Yeah,
the root of what I do is in Ayurveda, and I have an Ayurveda school myself where I certify other women to become Ayurveda holistic health coaches. But
Nice.
I mean, it's great because that you've done yoga and understand it from
Yeah.
that perspective, because Ayurveda is actually the sister science to yoga. So there's three sister sciences. There's the yoga, which is the three. They say when you do the three together, you get to moksha or liberation faster. But any of the pathways will get you to moksha and liberation. But when you incorporate the three, it's more of this holistic journey. So yoga is the journey to the pathway through spiritual enlightenment, and Ayurveda is actually the pathway through health and the connection of the mind body. And then we have the Jyotish astrology, which is the overseer, and that's the pathway through understanding your blueprint and your karma. And so they all work synergistically together. But Ayurveda is really the one that sort of looks after our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, and even our dharmic health, because that's all what encompasses health alchemy under the umbrella of Ayurveda.
So there's like 10 things I want to unpack there, but I couldn't have built a better bridge here. Like, thank you for doing Tom and I's job. That was perfect.
Look, man, I want to phone it in. It's Thursday night here. I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Hell of a day at the office.
So like you said, a lot of yoga people into this, and I'm a middle-aged white guy, so yoga is definitely part of my thing, right? And so that's it, though. Like that's as close as I get. What got you into it? And dogs.
This isn't the first time. Please do not worry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No one's delivering FedEx packages.
That's okay,
at this
because like
time for us.
my typical American education system, I'm like, you have small dogs? How are they not eaten by dingoes?
Yeah.
Like in my head, I'm like, there's got to be an animal out in the backyard.
You can tell the small dogs by their bark.
So
100%.
Oddly enough, I'm certified in animal acupuncture. I haven't done it
Really?
probably a decade, but yeah, for about 10 years, I was practicing on small animals. Yeah.
I would love to do that. That's amazing.
It's absolutely amazing. And there's a guy in Brazil that works in a zoo, and he's like treating a tarantula with like intradermal needles. And I'm like, now you're just making shit up.
God, yeah, no.
There's no
Now
fucking
you're just
way that's
making things
real.
up. There's no chart for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. So yeah, how do you get into this?
Yeah.
Harmony,
yeah.
like
Tell
what-
us your creation
Yeah.
story.
Yeah, so I'm actually, by my background, I'm a a registered nurse, and have been for 20 years. So went down that path, the Western medical system. Yeah, I guess I just didn't really, I was from a small country town, so it's like, be a teacher, be a nurse, go do something, and that's what I did. Never really that passionate about it, but I am super grateful that I did go down that pathway now, because I have such a broad insight into the system, which is a little bit different to yours in America, I hear, but
It functions.
Yeah.
I think a little bit better, slightly, what I can tell. Like, we do care about people more than their
We
money.
let people die in a
sometimes.
gutter. We don't care.
Sometimes. No, we have a free healthcare system here in the public. And I worked in it for many years as an emergency nurse. It's not perfect, I can say that, but I learned so much about the human body, injuries, all that kind of stuff. But what happened is I had twin boys, and also I'm a yoga teacher. So I've always been in that sort of yoga, Vedic. My parents are very alternative, I guess you could say. I mean, my name's Harmony, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, I've always been brought up that way. And then
your middle name's not like Moon or something, is it? Like, it's
Close.
not like...
Close.
They met at a fraternity.
Yeah. I'm just curious.
Apparently, I was made in the back of a combi van within 3 months that they met.
That
We're
feels
gonna
right.
have to translate the word combi, but we get the gist.
Do you not know what a combi is? You know, Volkswagen and combi van?
Yeah, we call them microbuses, but that is the typical Grateful
She's like,
Dead
what the fuck
touring.
is a microbus?
I know what a ute. What do you call them? Ute or utes?
Yeah, ute.
Pickup trucks. Yeah. I was like,
pickup truck to me sounds like I don't know what I can say on this podcast, but it sounds
You can
like
say
You say
literally
whatever the fuck you
anything,
want.
yeah, whatever the fuck you want. Yeah.
in fact, I love the
would be
C word,
driving
so
them?
feel free to drop that in.
Yeah.
Well, like pickup truck to me is like someone drives past a pickup, you're like, oh, that's like a pedophile would drive a pickup truck.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, not too far off from
We
here.
call that a rape van. That's the
Rape van
van
is
without the windows on it, you know?
Or the heart-shaped popped-out window from the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh, so I was made in a rape van then.
No, nice. Yeah.
No, microbus is very different.
Oh,
Microbus is like crunchy
The
granola.
rape van is the one where like the side has the double doors, but only one of them opens unless you unlock it. Like the back might have a window, might not, but some have windows, some don't.
Okay.
Like the ones without
There's
the
definitely
windows are
some
like,
dents in the side
that's
of
the
it
rape
too.
van.
Yeah,
That's the van you
Okay.
don't want to go near. Like
it normally
that
has
guy's a
free
creep.
candy spray painted on the outside.
Yeah.
All
yeah,
right, so
no.
I
This is
was
the weirdest
classy.
conversation.
I was made in the classy combi van.
The
but
classic
behind the
combi van.
point,
Very upscale.
It is funny though. These are all weird things that happen in two different cultures, and they're like similar enough where we both know what each other are talking about. But it's like the words were like, "What are you saying, crazy person?"
I know all my Australian terms from punk. Like, I gotta say, like, there's a band called The Chats
Oh
and
my god,
Amel and the Sniffers. They're amazing. Oh,
you have completely lost me, Tom. Sorry.
they got one called I'm on Smoko, and it's just the guy on a smoke break, and he's really pissed off about everything.
Well,
And as far as I can gather, but let's face it, all punk is about being pissed off.
Yeah, for sure. All right, back to wherever we were.
Let's
with
actually get
Harmony.
on topic.
so where we were is did grow up with more like alternate parents who were more into the alternative health. Anyway, after the birth of my twin boys, who are now almost 13, I went like my hormones went crazy, my gut health, so many different things. And I also started feeling really disconnected from my job. I was still in the emergency department. It never was something that I really loved and wanted. I did go down the allopathic medical route, but it's not very good with chronic conditions or women's health conditions like hormonal imbalances. As you'd know, Tom, with acupuncture, we treat a lot of that. And so I decided to go back to my roots in yoga teaching, and also my roots as in my parents being like more alternative, and look deeper into Ayurveda. And so I thought, well, I can apply that to myself. And so I started applying it to myself, and the transformation was something that it wasn't even on a physical level. Like it was just beyond that. I felt so connected and just full of purpose again, even though I hadn't left the hospital. But I decided that I'd go and study Ayurveda more in depth. I'd already done certifications in Ayurvedic psychology and nutrition and all of that, but I wanted to do like the full practitioner. So I went and did that. And the rest is history. It just sort of took off from there, and I started helping women with their hormonal problems. And it's just been amazing to see the transformation through other women's lives and to be able to help them, but also from a place of I understand you and I know what you're going through. So yeah, I actually blend like functional medicine, Ayurveda and acupuncture in with my clinic to help women the best that I can through those modalities. But the core of everything I do stems from the Ayurvedic principles.
Did
It
you say
seems so-
Ayurvedic psychology? Did you just say that?
Oh yeah,
Like,
that goes
is that-
deep.
Yeah. So we were talking about like the three. Have we now subdivided Ayurveda into like the physical and the psychological? Like, I mean, that I've definitely never heard.
Yes
Well-
and no, you can't separate them.
Yeah, right.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yes,
Right.
but no.
Yes, but you're
So-
wrong.
Welcome to Eastern
Ayurveda-
philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ayurveda sees the mind body as interconnected. So you can't separate it. But actually, Ayurveda has 8 branches, and one of those branches is actually surgery, like the Ayurvedic medicine. It has toxicology, it has like geriatrics, longevity, pediatrics, gynecology. It has 8 branches to it. And Ayurvedic psychology in its own right is a really like big aspect of Ayurveda, but we incorporate all of it. And what Ayurveda psychology speaks about is like, in the West, we see the mind as being, you know, a tool that we think with, or having thoughts we don't want in there, imposter syndrome thoughts, whatever it is. But the Ayurvedic psychology breaks down the different layers of the mind and recognizes that we don't actually utilize all of those aspects. So for instance, we have what we would use a lot is the ahamkara, which is our logical thinking and our ego. It's that sense of I, our personality. And we do need it as humans in this modern world. But what a lot of people aren't accessing are like the buddhi mind, which is that higher intellect. And they also talk about the samskaras, and the samskaras are imprints left on our chitta mind, which is our subconscious mind, that have been created through different things that have happened to us, whether that be trauma or good things. It leaves a subtle impression on the chitta mind, and our default pattern might be to go back to that habitual pattern because of this samskara playing out in our mind. It has the aspect of manas and memory, and how well your prana, which can translate directly pretty much to chi, like is being able to fuel the mind. Like if you've got blockages in your prana, your life force energy, or as Tom, you'd be very familiar with like the chi. It's like I guess from a TCM perspective, it's like it affects the Shen, right?
Yeah.
And so in Ayurveda, we're looking at like these different aspects of the mind. So when I see women, even with hormonal issues, is we take a really holistic approach, and I've created the higher self methodology. And the first step to that is health alchemy. So it's looking at the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and dharmic aspects of their health. But the second pillar is the empowered mind paradigm. And we really dive into that Ayurvedic psychology, because you can't heal from a disempowered state. You can't do anything from a disempowered state to your highest potential. And that's why we're here, is to live out our highest potential. And then the third pillar is dharmic impact. And dharma, we often translate to purpose in the West, but it's really just the right way of living. Like even coming here and us three talking, even if we did start talking crap, like it's still part of our dharmic path. We're having fun, we're educating people, we're inviting people into this conversation and making health and ancient history fun and relatable. And this is all part of our dharmic path if we're doing it with the right intention and the right way. And a lot of women who come in with hormonal imbalances, they're disconnected from the right way of living. They've been told to live a certain way, or they're not feeling like in touch with their purpose, their higher dharma. So that's also a big aspect that we look at in Ayurvedic health when we're bringing it all together.
So thank you. That's a great answer. Way more detailed than I could have ever imagined. And that was great, because I think that is, so I'm fascinated with this idea that we all have different words for the same shit, right? And I feel like this is like a theme that recurs on this show, but in my research outside of the show, it's just, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You're like, oh, that's that, this is that. They're all both, these theory people are saying the same thing. And so when you're explaining these things, it's awesome to have the clarity of connection to Ayurveda in general in this context. But as you're talking, I'm like, you said prana, and I've already talked with Tom, and I've already talked about prana and chi, being the same. And I'm like, but even gods and what your higher power, your greater purpose. I mean, we've heard 100 ways to describe the same thing. Summarily, what I like about it is it doesn't matter how or which one of these you grab onto. If you're moving in that direction, whatever you call it, it's good. It's better. Keep moving in that direction and it's fine. I don't care what you call it. Call it chi, call it prana, call it whatever the fuck you want. But it does help to have articulation when you're in conversation like this. You're like, okay, well, we can call it whatever, but in this conversation, we're calling it this, right? And now we all know what the fuck you're talking about.
Because that sounds like Hinduism right there, which it all relates back, right? I think when we had Jaya Myra, who was not conceived in the back of a Volkswagen.
Yeah. No, but you would think by the name for sure.
We were talking about, Matt and I both know a life coach named Arjuna. Right. So we were talking about the Gita,
Yeah.
And this idea that when Krishna finally reveals himself, he's like, basically, call me whatever you want. You're talking to me. And I love the fact that, especially when we move outside of the way Western thinking compartmentalizes, here's the spirit, here's the mind, leave the spirit to the religion, leave the mind to the psychology, and then we'll work on this physical thing. Eastern systems never do that, right? And they're taking into account the psychological aspects of this condition that is a very physical thing. And to the point is that, like, I have a student working at my office now. She's in acupuncture school, and she goes, you keep talking about this woman, Lorraine Wilcox, and she's brilliant. She taught herself how to translate ancient Chinese into English. Doesn't speak it, but she translated a book by Chinese Han female physicians. And their case histories are so much more in depth and inclusive, where the male will say, oh, she came in, she was sad. Well, this woman presented in my clinic. She has this going on, that going on. Here's her prevailing mental states. Here's all these things. And she's really whole picturing it much more than, say, even the male practitioners would do, right? Where it was even dismissed in Chinese culture, which is like, no, it's all about the spirit. So it's really nice to see this modern play, or this resurgence of the classics.
Yeah.
And I don't have a question there. I just was
I was just going to
very
say,
happy to see this coming up.
Say on your point, like when you said about how detailed her case history was, because she could, understand the emotional and spiritual context of what that client's going through, as opposed to the male doctors in China. But also, like, I see a lot of women with PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And it's only really in the last 10 to 12 years been a recognized thing. So the word hysterectomy, where you get your uterus removed, it came from the word hysteria, because that's what they would do to women.
I had
who
heard
would
that
have
a while
these...
back. I'm like, seriously? That
They would
true.
masturbate you.
Yeah,
the first vibrators were to treat women with hysteria.
Yeah, and then if that's they would take their whole uterus out.
Matt just paid for the admission to the show. He's so, like, that's it. That's all I need. That's going to be a soundbite.
Dude, we just got into a conversation 2 days ago about we found a vendor that sells these like very, very high end sex dolls, and they want us to be a distributor for it on Head Shop. And we're like,
wow,
you know what? That's pretty crazy, because like it's an AI world out there. By the way, 19 minutes and 17 seconds, Tom, is how long
we mentioned AI. We normally have AI. Like we joke about having a big button that we'll push for psychedelics and AI.
Yeah.
And we don't know which one we're going to hit first, but we're probably hitting both.
Yeah. But here's what's interesting, right? And actually that was a weird side shoot, but I'm bringing it back because
Good.
I'm actually, this actually is an interesting concept that I haven't even thought about too much. But these dolls are very popular right now because they are very lifelike, both in dimension, in touch. They have heaters now for all the right parts. Like they've got, jaws that move in the right direction, and,
that sounds scary.
It's crazy, right? But
when they turn on you.
But now what's happening quietly?
Yeah, they get jaw locked.
Yeah, they get jaw locked. Yeah. What's happening very quietly, though, is they're applying these AI models to these things. So we are only a hop, skip, and a jump away from an AI-enabled doll that's actually, and put a pause in that for 2 seconds. Let's take a half a step sideways to a guest we had on last week talking about AI-enabled therapy, and that it's fucking killing it because LLMs are fucking tremendous at neurolinguistic strip downs of what's happening and emulating that once they've torn it down to its molecular level. And they're fucking great at it. And I have to bite my tongue now when I get into conversations with clients that are like, oh, but like our clients really like that human touch. So I think we're going to stay with that for a while. And I'm shaking my head going, like, dude, do you know
the AI's
that the empathy
humans.
scale on the AIs are fucking crushing the empathy scale against human fucking studies, like clinical level studies where they're like, yeah, no, the humans are getting crushed, right? So imagine you have an AI enabled doll with this superhuman neurolinguistic power who has all the physical characteristics, but none of the spiritual characteristics. So this is where I was going with this, right? We've got this like very, 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 very long and detailed history with ourselves. Like we can touch us. I can touch you. Like, you know, like we are living in the world so we can describe it. This world does not have a description, right? And if there is a level, and Tom and I have talked about this, I love yoga, but you know when I didn't do yoga at all during COVID? Because the energy of a yoga class is wholly absent on
Zoom.
YouTube, and I couldn't fucking do it. Honestly, I lost interest, like sharp interest. Like I did like 5, and then I paid for Mark, what's his name? Kokoro Yoga, the SEAL Fit guy who did that. It was fucking great yoga because it mixes martial arts and functional training into like a weird yoga thing. I paid for it for like 6 months because I thought it would make me do it, and I didn't. I'm like, I gotta stop. Can't.
You
Can't
know,
do
it's so funny because even there was like a thing where I would go do these Qigong seminars, and there's, 40, 60 people in the room, and you feel their energy too. And then you're like vibing after that weekend, and Monday you practice and you're like, that was great, but it didn't do the same thing. And by the end of the week, you're like, shit, it was this community thing. But let's get back to PPMD, because I think, one of the things that was always so funny to me, I've been an acupuncturist for 24 years now, was like people would come in with these horrible menstrual complaints. And you go, well, what did your gynecologist do? They gave me Wellbutrin. I don't know what you guys call that, but it's a SSRI, right? They gave them something for depression. I mean, you probably have like the generic name as well, but yeah, basically they told the woman she was crazy without telling her she was crazy. There's nothing physical going on. Get the hell out of my office.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one because they can have very normal hormones. It's not that they have hormonal imbalances, it's that they have a true sensitivity to the natural fluctuation of their hormones. And so I think that's why acupuncture does work really, really well for it, actually, because it can just sort of help with that transition period. And things like, you're right, like the herbology, like herbal medicine is amazing. I mean, that's where medicine originated from, right? And so even like what they use now, the synthetic pharmaceutical stuff, is mimicked off of herbs. And there's so much beauty in that, but also like going into that spiritual aspect of the woman to sort of understand herself and what's happening in her mind and her body, and not feeling that she is crazy and she's a psychopath. Like there's real chemical disruptions going on in the body, and it's normal and it's natural. It's just the way that her body is responding to it. But there is so many beautiful natural paths for that, like the different herbs and the different meditations and pranayama, breath work. And it's just really like trying to get on top of that central nervous system dysregulation that happens with the hormonal dysregulation as well. But yeah, it is a little bit sad that for years and still today, like women are sort of fighting that narrative of just being crazy women.
I think it's nuts that we just I think it's nuts that we ever describe
things. Validly pissed off at you. Like you could have fucked up. But like,
in fact, this conversation might have something to do with me hating the fucking. You know what I mean? Like you're like, come on, man. No, I just think it's not funny, haha, but funny. Like what the hell were we thinking that was like an actual medically accepted definition?
Well, I guess the AI sex dolls won't have PMDD, so...
Yeah, but you know what?
They're never going to get moody with you.
Yeah, they're not going to get moody, but then again, follow that bouncing ball, right? Without the spiritual connection, there's no yin and yang relationship with that.
Well, they don't have prana. That's the thing that's missing from these dolls. They don't have prana, the life force energy.
But then what does that affect? And where I was going is
that's the weird thing, because
have,
is that lack of consciousness then?
It's lack of consciousness, but it's also lack of, and like a much deeper connection, because we're human, we are energetic beings, and so we transmit a different energetic field to what like a robotic doll would transmit, and those energies can speak to each other on such a subtle level that we as humans can't understand.
No, it's 100%.
It's like when you can be in the room and really feel what someone's feeling before they even have to say anything. It's because our energies are reading each other and they're sort of communicating on like a really subtle level. So I think, like, for instance, I've got twin boys, and one of them got hit in the mouth at school the other day with a metal drink bottle and cracked his tooth in half.
Oh.
And the other, he was fine, he didn't cry or anything, but his twin brother, when he heard about it, didn't even see it or anything, he just started crying. He just felt so sorry for him and so sad, because he's such an empathetic being. And you're not going to probably maybe down the track, but it's not true empathy. If you tell like the sex doll, this story, they're not going to start crying. They're not going to have real true feelings. And eventually we can pick up on that if we don't numb them too much ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's the question though, right? Because I agree with you. My gut says that you're totally spot on. But what I'll add to this, and here's where it goes sideways for me, but this is also why I love Ayurveda, yoga, and all of this, right? Is because there is a very hard to quantify that energy relationship, right? Like that's really hard to articulate. It's really hard to really explain even because, but you just know, right? You just have this intuition that this is right. But you only have that if you're open to knowing it exists, opening your senses to absorb it, looking for it in the cosmic space around us, right? Like you have to you're not born with that. Some people have a heightened sense of it. Sure. We definitely know empaths. It's a category of human being. Like we know this. I get it, but that's not most people. Most people need to be taught this, and our world doesn't do that by default for sure. So if you haven't focused on it or known about it or tried in any way to sharpen it, I actually think it's pretty easy to just fucking mute it out because you just don't have an antenna for it at all. So you know what I mean? But again,
little on that.
Well, I want to know. That's what I want to know.
People
Is that
are
even
closed off to it. They're too caught up in the mundane, right? They're
100%.
worried about where they're going. They're looking at their phone. But I don't think I do agree that it's an innate part of being human.
Yeah.
But people are so distracted.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that. Only from my understanding is that being a human being as well as spiritual being, one of our main purposes is to evolve and to grow. And that evolution happens through different lessons and learning and responses and communication and connection. And when we come up with conflicts because real people's energy and real people disagree with each other or they have thought out conversations, you learn and you grow from those things. You learn in the way that you respond. You learn from that person. But when you are with a computerized doll, for instance, a lot of the time they're going to tell you what they want to tell you, or they will tell you maybe not what you want to hear because they have their own sort of algorithm, but you fight back with it. It's not the same, because then you can probably start laughing at it, going, oh, you stupid freaking robot, and off you go. Whereas it's so different with human to human because there is real feelings involved, and that is what is missing with a robot. There is no real true emotions. There's no real true feelings. And so all of the aspects that make us human are missing from that very thing, I guess you could say.
And I do think that that's right. I guess where I'm sort of like a couple things you said, to play devil's advocate here, you have to sort of like understand that this is a heightened sense of evolution when you say our purpose is to evolve, right? Well, I actually would say that is not even close to the even median line anymore. People are not on that wavelength because they don't have to be, right? Like there's just you could like doom scroll on your phone sitting at a stoplight. Like, I mean, you could literally, we can outsource every microsecond of our free time to Instagram or TikTok, and people do. So I guess my question is if you're in the statistical mean in that environment where you're just, every time you're at a stoplight, you pull out your phone and somebody's having an energy mismatch, even if they are a real person, like, do you even notice that? No, of course you don't. Like, you're not in tune with that. Like, that's not even on your radar. So is it not plausible to think you could be duped by a fucking robot with, by the way, one of the most highly tuned algorithms in human history? Yeah, I don't think that's a stretch.
But I do think there's going to be a certain, and I would push back on that whole argument of like that person that's doom scrolling that's completely out of touch. Maybe that is their arc, right? If we're talking about reincarnation, maybe they haven't gotten to the same
maybe that's on the
level, but that's better than they were last time, you know?
Yeah, maybe. That's a good point.
And after we got to get, when is Doug coming back on the show, Doug Brackman?
Yeah, he is coming.
But like, remember, like he fucking shook me awake when he said, like, hey, you're not normal. Normal is, go stand in line at Walmart. And I'm like, oh God, that sounds like hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walmart
for so many people. You have Walmart.
Yeah. No.
They have to pay people fair wages.
Yeah. Nope. Walmart can't come here.
So it is like a budget store, but it draws in a certain clientele that is not necessarily
Ayurveda.
They're not reaching for the stars, let's say. In most cases they're struggling to survive.
We have Costco now. Is that the same thing?
Costco is like unionized. They pay $32 an hour.
No, Costco's a different story.
Costco's a different story. We all love them.
Okay.
Yeah. But there is nothing more quintessentially America than Costco, for God's sakes. I mean, that is like
Costco. Yeah. $1.50. I got that dog in me as a t-shirt.
Yeah. So anyway,
is it $1.50 for the hot dog and the soda there too?
Yeah. Like
Costco's far away from me and it's not really where we go.
I know. I gotcha. It's just a thing where like the CEO will not charge.
We're not
He's
that
like, I don't care if we lose on the $1.50 hot dog soda combo.
Yeah.
I think people go there to buy in bulk. My understanding is to buy bulk food.
That is correct.
Yeah, overconsumption.
Or a day ending in Y in anywhere in the United States, just to let
we that's where we shop. That's
because like you don't need a roll of toilet paper, you need a pallet of toilet paper. Because
God forbid another pandemic happens and then somebody's got a whole garage full of it.
Yeah. So Harmony, let's come back to this because we're gonna go crazy here. But so the Ayurveda side for my go way back because I want to be clear on this. To me, was always like the food, nutrition, healing, all of that. Is that even close to true? Like, am I in the ballpark there?
You're in the ballpark.
Then I got a follow-up question.
It's just, yes, you're definitely in the ballpark. It's a small part of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda really looks at the individual constitution of a person. So look at the elements and then they're further put into what we call doshas. And everyone has a unique combination of those doshas. And the way that we prescribe things like nutrition, like food, is dependent on their dosha.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that is part of it. But also it will, like your dosha, your individual constitution will also play out in the way that you respond in your mental capacity as well, in your health. You'll have an affinity for different sort of diseases depending on your constitution. And it's like when we're talking, it's so hard to try to not confuse people because it goes so deep. But even when you're talking about like that person at the stoplights just being on their phone and just doing the doom scroll, like we can look at it from like a dosha constitution. Perhaps they're like a kapha dosha, maybe they're a pitta dosha, or a vata. They just can't like not do anything. They can't be still. So they've always got to be doing something for that dopamine hit. Or perhaps when we look at it from like the Ayurvedic psychology point of view, they're just in a big state of they've got a tamasic mind state, which is just like inertia. They're constantly having like what we call, and you might have heard the term in yoga, like that maya, that illusion. And so they're just stuck in this state of inertia all of the time. But that's not the true essence of them. That's not their true self. And so they've got a doshic imbalance or a psychological imbalance going on.
Well, that's fascinating. So you can kind of like say, oh, I see this imbalance here, and we can kind of zero
is the pattern.
in. Yeah.
Because years ago, when I was back in high school, I bought this book on Ayurvedic medicine, and it had the typical person sitting in lotus with the chakras. But when I opened it, it was more of like home modalities. So, of course, it talks about neti pot, which I think if people are familiar with an Ayurvedic modality, that might be something they know about. But it even talked about like to clean the throat with like swallowing like cheesecloth and like a long distance of it over time. And then it talked about weird stuff like instead of an enema where you would take a piece of bamboo traditionally and you'd insert that into your rectum and draw water up into your rectum as a practice to clean out. And I'm reading the book an 18-year-old guy going, none of this. No, there's no way in hell I'm doing any of this.
Put bamboo in my ass? Are you kidding me? Like what the?
A mild size piece. We're not talking something you build scaffolding out. We're talking about something maybe you keep the tomato plants upright.
I mean, you got to use what you got.
This doesn't sound comfortable at any scale.
No, but like none of it was really comfortable because I do a lot of neti pot and it's not always pleasant, but it does have some sense where you can go to you can go to a pharmacy and get an enema. You can go do that as a healthcare practice, right? coffee enemas were a huge thing, especially for colon cancer. You know, so it's gross, it's bizarre, it's foreign to us, but it seemed like this was a part of that as well. How much of that, like, because like clearly somebody wrote a book on it, so it exists. But how much of that is not necessarily in your practice, but in the Ayurvedic realm and in that practice?
Yeah, well, it's definitely been modernized over time because we have got more accessible to, you know, proper enema equipment rather than bamboo sticks. And what you're explaining is a lot of processes that they do in what is called panchakarma. So that's the Ayurvedic detox. But the Virachana, which is like what you're explaining, shoving the cloth down, it's to make you vomit, right? Obviously, they don't use that. They, a lot of the time, well, I've never seen them use that now. That's actually a yogic cleansing. It's a tantric yoga cleansing practice still though. But in saying that, they would use herbs to make you vomit. And you're only going to induce vomit in a panchakarma setting if you have a kapha disorder, any disease which is above the heart. So it's not like everyone go vomit to cleanse themselves, because that's not going to suit a vata person. That will make them more imbalanced and even a pitta. So that's only more for the kapha. And if you've got upper body disease going on, and it's usually now done by drinking a herb or whatnot.
All right. Well, I appreciate that clarification, because it was like, you know, I mean, it was like, you know, not a thick book, and it left a lot.
It was a brief study on
to like imagination, and there were some drawings.
All right, I got it at the checkout aisle at Walmart. I just want to tell you,
like, you can get everything at Walmart. I did not try any of it, because after that I was like,
no, that didn't sound good to you.
You know, I think there's some steps missing here.
I think they ripped out a page. I'm not sure.
I think that this is a condensed version of something that's much bigger that result. But like even in acupuncture school, right? We get to that whole chapter on emetics, and my teacher goes, "Look, you're not going to use these. We're skipping it." Right? Because why?
What is that?
Emetics are things that make you throw up, right?
Got it.
So it was a traditional cure in Chinese medicine. And much like Harmony's talking about in Ayurvedic medicine, not everybody does it. It's for specific reasons.
Right.
You don't just, hey, vomit, you'll feel better, right? I mean, that sounds
like shit, let's throw up.
It sounds very like Roman vomitorium kind of thing.
Yeah.
But even then, and that was a funny SNL sketch back in the day. But anyway, but it's when you don't have, I almost feel like there's a little bit of, look at how weird this is, almost rather than giving it its genuine, look, no, there's a science here, there's a rationale, there's a thought process.
Right.
It's not, and it was more of like, look at this weird stuff they do in India. It was almost how that book was presented.
Yeah.
And, you know, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And I almost feel that that's like
Literally.
a bad faith argument. Yeah. Definitely.
Off in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
and
wouldn't
they're
be
like,
down.
when you get to a yard, that's pretty good. And I'm like, I don't even like how you just work your way up to that. Like that, like, you're leaving so much out.
Yeah, no, that's certainly not what we're practicing.
No, and I didn't think so. But it you know, I can see the cover of the book so clearly that clearly it left a mark.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds pretty traumatic, so I'm pretty sure that would have left a mark. Yeah, this sounds like a terrible book, Tom.
You know, an interesting read. It was a curiosity. But the curiosity went away when it was like, all right, now give it a go.
Shoving a cheesecloth down your throat. Yeah, that feels weird.
While you've got a sliver of bamboo up the backside.
That feels very weird, man.
It you know.
Harmony, our first episode was on orgasmic meditation, and when we were reading the prescription for it, like it was like rub the clitoris
what could go wrong here
for 3 minutes, and Tom and I like, what fucking idiot reads this and is like, oh, this seems like the good idea. Like,
totally works.
Like, you know,
so a stranger's going to come to your house because they've got a glove on. It's all medical.
No, it's on the up and up. And I'm like, everything Tom just said feels like the exact same thing to me. I'm like, really? This never felt like the right idea. Everything you just said sounds crazy. Like, you know, we're going to have to like back
a little
away from
about this topic, and some of this doesn't ring true.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. This all feels weird, dude.
Well, there was no fact checking back then, was there? There was nothing.
Well, you know, I mean, this was before everybody could self-publish, so you know, you also didn't have Google to go like, hey, just checking on this,
just checking in on this.
Just let me run this through a gross filter before I decide to pull the trigger. But I could see also some very crunchy people going, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's try that.
But Harmony, that's like a great segue back to this, is that you are in this field, and we've seen this a bunch of times, where there are people like Tom and I, and I'm sure a lot of people, if not most of them, that are open to this conversation, but there's a lot of people, a lot of whom could really benefit from a deep dive in this area, who are just very resistant because they just don't. They have this like sort of like almost embarrassment. It's almost like, am I doing the thing that those weird Indian people do? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's this like completely disconnected thing where it's like, they don't feel like they have permission to do it because it's too weird. And meanwhile, like me personally, like it's not even like nothing is a thing. It's just the next exploration. So like nothing's weird or not weird. It's all sort of like, I don't know. I'm willing to try a lot because I don't really have a hang up on the thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have a hang up on the thing. So you're telling them this shit. They're like, dude, this chick is crazy. Like, I mean, there's no way. Like,
well, I certainly don't tell people to go shove cloths down their throat.
For sure.
I'm going to give it a go in clinic next time. I'm going to see what happens. Let's just start with that. I'll open with that.
But I guess with the way that I present Ayurveda is I'm speaking to the modern woman. And so it's not like they think, well, as far as I know, they don't think like that's weird. I mean, even for instance, like my husband's in Western medicine and he will say to me, like with our kids, and he'll say, well, what Ayurvedic treatments can we do first? Like, what do you want to do? What acupuncture, what Ayurveda? And his colleagues are listening to my podcast. So I think the way that I've been able to deliver it is very much within the realms of sort of like still true to its roots and all the foundations of Ayurveda, but bring it to the modern world. Because even in the Vedic text, so the Vedas are the Vedic text where all of this has come from, the last pages were left blank. And my teacher always told me that was because the scholars, the sages, they knew that we are in a world of evolution and ever changing. There's going to be new practitioners. There's going to be emerging science because Ayurveda takes its insights from nature itself and from the science.
So the better our understanding of nature, the more
and
involved this could be.
But I think that's a hallmark of every medicine, right? It's alive, it's evolving. We see that in Chinese medicine, right? And as long as we, the expression in China is when drinking water, remember the source, but it doesn't mean that it can't evolve, it can't change, it can't adapt. Absolutely. And I think that's very astute of people thousands of years ago to say, look, we know new things are going to be learned. We know new things are going to be discovered. And that doesn't weaken the medicine, right? And I also feel that when people are doing this right, it's not a cultural appropriation. It is giving it a voice in a new environment, which, from my experience with acupuncture and East Asian medicine, when a different time happened, the language changed around it. When it went to a different country, the language changed about it. Some of the practices changed and looked a little different. You can see the roots, you can see how it evolved, and people articulate it different. And I think now with our ability to look at modern science, right? We know acupuncture, East Asian medicine is one of the heaviest studied things, right? So even though it's alternative, I can point to studies and they don't negate the classical things. They just inform it differently for a different population. It makes total sense that Western physicians are listening to you because they know where the shortcomings are in Western medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
The number of times I'm invited to talk to a med school in Baltimore, not because they're like, look at this oddity, but they're like, well, what can we do to keep people out of the hospitals? What can we do when we can't give you opioids because we know it's going to get somebody addicted? What can we do when we don't see anything on the imaging and there's nothing on the blood test and we got nothing? We can't, it's all in your head. And we go, no, it's not.
Yeah.
No, it's really there.
Your nursing background must be tremendously effective.
It's huge
in that regard, because what's awesome about you, honestly, you're one of the most knowledgeable people in all of the, just if we're just talking about vocabulary and comprehension of that vocabulary, you're like aces, but you're also not one of these pretentious douchebags who's running around be like, oh, there's this word that you don't know for sure.
Yeah, let me talk down
and I'm
to
super
you.
fucking
Yeah.
smart because I know this word and you don't, which is, I don't want to say a hallmark of this discipline, but it's a popular situation, if you know what I mean, right? Like, I mean, and that is great because people could react to you like regular information, not some celestial hand down from, you know what I mean? Like,
There were two groups in school that I was jealous of, right? And they were both career changers. One was massage therapists. So I do a Japanese style of acupuncture. It's very palpation based. Massage therapists have touched people for hours and hours and hours, and they get very great tactile feel. The other group was the nurses. You know, I mean, they're the workhorses in the hospital. They see everything. They know everything. They're doing more of the techniques than the doctors are, right? A lot of times the doctors are just one okaying stuff, but they bring that knowledge base in an open-minded setting, and they want to incorporate. I mean, my school had a holistic nursing program. So you had to be an RN to get into it. And then it was herbs, it was Amai, it was, you know, the Qigong, it was a lot of the hands-on therapies. And, you know, the nurses just loved that because it kind of filled in some of those blind spots.
Yeah. I think also that's why I do get a lot of women who are open to Ayurveda and acupuncture for the first time because they see that I can bring in the understanding of the Western medicine, and I'm not also going to shame them if they are, you know, also taking that route or on medications that they need to be on. It's not like, no, it's one way or the other. It's really about meeting the person with where they're at in their health journey. And I think that's a huge thing, because there's been sort of headways, and I really noticed this actually through like the whole COVID period, between the two disciplines just absolutely dissing each other. And it's like, well, we can actually work together for the better of the person. We don't have to be against each other. And if we do have conflicting views, we can still accept that about the other person, and that's whatever, that's on them. The world is so populated that even if Ayurveda and acupuncture could help 90% of the world, 90% of the world is definitely not going to be going down that path.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean just because they don't go down that path, we can't have something that's going to support them, even if they are the doom scrollers that sit at the traffic light doom scrolling, and then they get, you know, something goes wrong with them and they don't want to do the alternative route. We still, as humanitarians, we still have to support these people. And if that's whatever, you know, the fast track route, then that's a fast track route for them, I guess. We're not all going to be enlightened and awakened in this lifetime, that's for sure.
And that's a very sober way of looking at it, and it's great, but it's unfortunately not like, you know, I say these stereotypes, you know, people who fulfill a stereotype don't do that group any favors, right? Because like they just further like drive the nail into the coffin of people be like discounting that. And it doesn't matter what you're talking about, but in this regard, you know, when you get somebody who walks into a room and it's like floating on a proverbial cloud because they think they know they're all these fancy words and they can talk very spiritually and whatever, that's not actually meeting people where they're at. That's like dragging them to where you're at. And that feels really fucked up, but they don't see it that way. So it makes it even harder because they're not necessarily receptive to the feedback. They're like, hey buddy, you're kind of a douche right now, can we bring it down a couple notches?
You know, and it's 100% egoism too.
Well,
you
that's
know,
exactly
it is not they're there for themselves, not for the person in front of them.
It's spiritual bypassing as well. Like I actually left yoga studio I was teaching at because of this, because they were trying to almost, in the whole pandemic, you know, situation, 2020 situation, we're almost trying to make a cult like following with untruths. And I'm like, you were meant to be accepting of people, and we're meant to learn from people. It doesn't matter if we've got different viewpoints. We're all still friggin' humans. It's like, why? That's not spiritual, what you're teaching. It's not the foundation of yoga. Like you would have heard the yamas and the niyamas, like the ethical principle ways of living. Like you're not doing that. Even like the first, you know, non-violence, that's non-violence with our words, you know, asteya, truth. Well, what does that mean like to you? And it's really, it's really frustrating. You need to like shake them a bit and be like, go just have a bit of fun.
You need to practice some violence on them to get the.
I mean, I went to Catholic school K through 12. And
that is definitely not nonviolent.
I'm telling you that those people fucking invented that story, right? Like they're like, oh no, like no, do as I say, definitely not as I do. Like these are not the same.
It's so funny though.
Love my neighbor unless they're not Catholic, and then fuck that guy.
You hear about that. You hear about that with they did the documentary on him. What's the hot yoga guy?
Yeah, Bikram.
Right? You know, it's like here's a guy that just got so full of his own shit.
Totally.
Yeah, you know, maybe he started out okay. You can't tell.
Was he the one that was like a baggage handler or something and went crazy, or was that the other one? That was the other guy.
No. He basically gained some popularity with hot yoga, and then was like literally like molesting students and beating people, and
like
who's the guy whose name Yogi T was named after, and they actually that's the guy I'm talking. Yeah,
he
was a baggage handler.
Yeah,
and like basically like had like a backyard armchair psychology degree.
The Ashtanga.
Fuck, what was his name? But he moved to LA and became like a fucking superstar. And now, you know what I mean? And I'm like, yeah, no.
But like honestly, and Matt, I had this conversation today about some names that I know we've talked about locally. And I'm like, what is with these people that can scam some of the richest, smartest people that I know? Because I don't see any redeeming qualities in this person.
No.
And Matt now knows I had somebody come into my office and mention that person and literally was just like, you know this person? I go, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're like, what do you think about them? And I said, I don't know. What do you think about them? And when they went off, I'm like, you're 100% right.
I think the problem is that in those communities, like, you know, people who are seeking spiritual guidance or enlightenment often, not always, but often start off as quite, you know, they're coming from a place of vulnerability. They're vulnerable people. Maybe they're going through something. And then if it makes them feel a little bit better, then they're like, this person knows what they're talking about. And unfortunately, it can be such a hidden world of predators in the spiritual world. And it's a shame. It does happen a lot.
Well, businesses are businesses. It doesn't matter if it's a church or if it's
it just hurts so much more when that ethical component, like I expect an insurance company to fuck me over.
Yeah.
I don't expect somebody that's walking around telling people how spiritual they are
to fuck you over.
Well, yeah, but you know, that's kind of funny because like, you know, the real spiritual person is not going to be talking about how spiritual they are. You know, it's like, I just don't do that, man. You know, all right, on to the next thing. Okay, well, that's interesting. Why'd you do that? Oh, it just felt right.
But that energetic pathway, right? And Harmony, we've touched on this a couple times, but that energetic pathway is what keeps us in that yin yang balance in my mind, right? Like if I go into a room, because I had like 3 really good business deals go right, and I go into my 4th meeting and I'm just a little bit high on the horse, like the energy in the rest of the room brings me back down because it's an immediate balancer to me, right? Like, and that's the point, right? Like the point is that your energy and my energy in concert produces a balance, right? Like that's the point. I don't know. If I don't have to strike a balance like that, that's where I was going with that, right? I'm like, I don't know. There's nothing to keep me in balance, right? In fact, this doll could actually adjust the algorithm to augment. Like if I'm producing chi, like yin, let's triple down on yin. And now all of a sudden I'm a fucking crazy person, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like that. And that's like not like bananas. Like that's not a bad shit crazy conspiracy.
And maybe it should just take you down a few pegs where it'll say something like, I've had bigger.
Yeah, like
oh jeez, hit me right in the ego.
Fine. I'll be less of a dick. Yeah, thanks. So like, okay, so what are you doing? So it sounds like you had a great journey of like getting here. Like, where are you at now? It feels like you're kind of in a current, and like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I feel really this year. I'm feeling really, really good. I felt the last few years I was kind of burnt out. I was doing a lot of different things in my business, study, all of the things. And this year I feel just on point on my dharmic path. And I think we can go through so much that we are constantly questioning, like, is this the right path for me? Is this the right path? And then finally that sort of, it all clears up and you're like, "Oh, I've made it. But then that only lasts for a fleeting second because you never really feel like you made it, especially if you've sort of got that pitta energy that's always like wanting to achieve more and more. But at the moment, I feel like I feel really good in my health. I feel like, and when my health isn't optimal, I know that I can bring it back. I understand my body. I feel like business-wise, I am serving the right people. I'm really happy with what I'm doing. I love teaching Ayurveda in my Ayurveda school and being able to be a voice in the modern world for Ayurveda as well. And as Tom mentioned, I've done my acupuncture, master in acupuncture as well, and bringing that into my clinic. I'm always going to be a lifelong learner. Like, I love these conversations because it really does open my mind up to, you know, different opinions and sex dolls and all these different
sex dolls.
I mean, really
that was a weird left field.
Don't discount the sex
rope
doll
in there. Yeah.
But you know what though? Like that is a thing, right? Like we're living in a world that's on the verge of separating mechanical and physical.
Yeah.
Right. And when those lines get blurred and we are hardwired to this energetic relationship, I think an unintended consequence could very well be a very unpredictable energetic imbalance, which we don't even have vocabulary to describe because it's never happened. Right. And like, when was the last time that happened where it has never happened? Right. Like that happens at a anthropological scale, not at a lifetime scale, right? Like that's like a tens of thousands of year thing, 5,000s of year thing, not, you know what I mean? So like this is this could be a big moment for us anthropologically and like developmentally, right? I mean, I don't know. We might have to rewrite some textbooks, right? I don't know.
We might have to fill in those last 2 pages of the Vedas.
I mean, yeah, I didn't even pull that. Yeah, exactly.
Whole
That's
chapter
a great
on
way.
sex dolls. I didn't.
Yeah.
No one had that.
Who would have thought that would be a chapter in the Ayurveda?
I like this
And now
idea
we'll
of
talk about sex
synthetic
dolls.
consciousness. So weird.
But here's the thing. You know what? If you ever wanted to know if any of this shit was bullshit or if it was real, we'll find out with the sex dolls now, won't we? Right? Like that has a very clear A/B test capacity, right? We have very similar things. In fact, you could probably make them sound exactly like somebody you know, somebody who's on TV.
Well, that doesn't sound ethical.
No, of course not. But you could. Like, I mean,
well, people are definitely
encouraged.
going to do it.
yeah. So, but we could see, you could absolutely A/B test that. And then like, let's talk about how exciting that is. Can you imagine having a clinically valid way to A/B test consciousness in real life? That's fucking nuts. Can you imagine?
Heard my head. I don't think I've had
Can't
any
imagine.
weed yet.
I'm just like, oh
I
my
mean,
God. What's
I didn't want to break our guest, Tom. I'm sorry. And Tom's rubbing his face. He's like,
no,
oh shit.
you know, because my 11-year-old the other night goes, look, Dad, there's probably another universe where things are better than they are right now. And I go, yeah. She goes, why don't we just go there?
Uh-huh.
I'm like, how do we get there?
Willow
She
just
goes,
proved that.
Do we get into a spaceship and we just fly? I'm like, sweetie, the universe is expanding. We don't know what it's expanding into. We know there's other universes. We're not sure if they like literally lay on top of ours, if there's another empty void somewhere where another universe. And she goes, Dad, I don't think I want to have this conversation right now. And I was like, yeah, it hurts.
Google
It's weird.
Willow.
Yeah.
Google Willow, their quantum computer proved the multiverse exists mathematically. It was fucking nuts. And it was a story that nobody reported on. There was like 1 or 2 like people who pulled it out. And I'm like,
what do you do with that? You know, what do you do with that when quantum physics shows an object in 2 different places at the same time and it's the same fucking object? Your brain doesn't know what to do with that. Like,
okay,
rationally,
so hold on.
we understand that.
So
and
here's
then you
where it
just
goes
go home
crazy
and have
though.
your dinner and you're like, all right, I got to forget about that.
But here's where it goes real crazy. What if the multiverse is just physical potentiality of our corporeal representation, but we are actually sharing a line of consciousness? So you talk
now
about
you're getting back to the last guest talking about we're just one person.
Maybe
living
it's not. Yeah.
one
maybe
consciousness
it's not,
living different lives at the same time.
and maybe it's not reincarnation for up leveling. Maybe it's just simultaneous modifications on the same life, right?
All
That's
right.
got multiple versions, right?
Give me a second here.
But it's fascinating because Harmony, the longer we do this show, the more I think esoteric some of our like guests can
but
get.
It gets so weird because we're talking about traditional practices, and it went here because I firmly believe that at some point there's a bunch of gurus sitting around writing down the Vedas going, yeah, the multiverse exists. It's totally real.
That's like quantum physics. It's been a thing for so long.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been known for so long. But I think our human minds, we just always want to like conceptualize everything and understand and know everything immediately. And our minds have become more wired because of things like AI, you know, and Google. We can get the answer to everything straight away. So having even conversations like this, making people think beyond what they can just Google and using those different aspects of the mind that I was speaking about is so important to keep our human evolution going so that we aren't just taken over and merged into a robot-like things.
Well, and I think that like I think bring it up several feet like from that, like, and just like so we have.
She's like, I wanted to come on and talk about Ayurveda.
Yeah. And you fucking idiots are dragging me down.
Idiots are talking about sex dolls and multiverses.
Like, the fuck have I gotten myself into?
What the hell is going on in America? We're not healthy.
Yeah.
I see that now.
But the reality is like you've got like it's cool to be able to have these conversations because like the reality is like there's no one path, right? It's an every path. And I think the reason why people that like yourself, like certainly most people, if not all people we have on this show, those people all understand that at a DNA level. They might not have even said those words out loud. They just know it's a truth and they operate as though it was true. And like, I really believe that is the right answer. So having an antenna and like understanding how that works is super important, even if you don't follow all of it. It's just like another framework to lattice information around that you could bind other stuff to later. You know what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense? Like, I feel like it's just important to keep building this language, right? Like this toolbox.
Absolutely. And I think, well, that's like, you know, at the core, Ayurveda is just all about self-awareness. You're referring to like having that antenna as sort of like really cultivating more and more self-awareness so that when things do sort of move into the other realms and whatnot, you still need to be so self-aware of who you are at the core, which is beyond that physical body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we send people to you to hear more? I love what you're doing, and I really like that you're dialed into.
We're definitely going to ask you back because I feel like we didn't even scratch the surface here. So long as you'll come back on.
Yeah. She's like, don't call me, I'll call you.
You lost me at sex dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a podcast, Harmony Inspired Health Podcast, that Tom's been on my podcast as well, talking about cupping, TCM. My website, harmonyinspiredhealth.com.au, because I'm Aussie, so that's .au.
Love it.
And I'm quite active on Instagram, which is at Harmony Inspired Ayurveda. So yeah, give us a shout out there. If you've got any questions regarding Ayurveda, the questions regarding the sex dolls, direct it to Matt. Because
Matt seems to be all in on those. He's got the down. He will send you a discount code once they have them up on the website.
I did actually get a chance to see a couple in person. And,
I bet you did, Matt.
In person? And that's
so
in person, yeah. Like 2 weeks ago, I was at a show in Las Vegas where we met this company, right? And like it would, I'll be honest, like the genesis of this. No. Okay. This was just a regular head shop type show. But like it got me thinking as soon as I saw it, I said like, there's a real thing to look at here because the people they're selling these dolls to are deeply traumatized people. And they're not going to say that. They're not going to come out like you know what? Most of them are probably very high functioning. Like they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're normal people. So I don't mean they're traumatized like they're Unabombers, right? Like it's not like they're...
Hey, the Unabomber had some great environmentalist ideas that were suppressed.
They're not crazy people. But they are saddled with a deep misalignment of some kind, right? Like this is I dare I say it a pathology, right? Like it is a soothing mechanism in an extreme sense, right? Like it's very, very fringe, but that's what makes it so incredibly attaching to them. Like they are very bonded to this. Like they will have date nights where they dress them up and paint their nails. It's like a whole thing. Like it's a big deal. And I said, okay, that's the non-AI. When we just like even if we used our little caveman brain and went 2 steps into the future, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out where this story goes, right? You start putting on quasi-sentience on top of that. This goes dark real fast.
They're going to abuse them. They're going to fucking abuse the dolls.
Yeah. And I'm like sitting here going, you know what's weird though? Like,
no.
when society I don't have a problem with people doom scrolling at a street light necessarily, right? Like, but I guess what it is, it's symptomatic of a systemic disconnection from our human experience. And the further we get away from that, the harder I think it is to come back to it, right? Like it's very hard to find your way back to that if you've cut that off. But it's also like it means that if you want to really live up to that phrase, meet people where they're at, then you have to find new like systems of play, because that human in an AI realized doll, like when they've really made that last sever from reality into this world, that's a completely different ball of wax than anything anyone's ever dealt with before. Like now we're in a fucking uncharted territory. And if we all deal in this like spiritual energy realm, which we all do, like that is also new information. That's an entirely new realm. Like, how do you even qualify that? The sages shouldn't have fucking predicted this. I guarantee it. Like,
I think they thought we'd be enlightened by now.
Yeah.
I think we let
fake
them
rubber
down.
human that you're going to have sex with?
Wait a minute. What's going on there?
Why would you ever
We
let this
literally
happen?
gave you the blueprint.
Yeah.
You could have been enlightened.
Yeah, I don't know, man. But yeah, I didn't want to. It's just funny that you seem like somebody who would have been okay to talk about that, first of all. But second of all, like in your.
Glad I gave off that impression.
Yeah.
It's a vibe thing.
It's a vibe. It's an energetic thing.
But yeah, it's an energetic thing, right? Like, you're right. This person's
She's not coming
gonna...
back on, Matt.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean,
She's
we
going
already
to pull my episode on her show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, before we dig a hole any deeper, let's wrap this up. But yeah, hey, listen, I honestly, it was a really fun conversation.
I hope you found this more fun than upsetting.
No, I loved it. No, I truly did. It was lots of fun. It was very different to the other podcasts I've been on.
Yeah. Well,
look, yeah, you know, there's so many people sitting there and looking at hard facts and keeping it very
boring,
dry, and like Matt and I started this just having a conversation in the back of a room with other people, and they just started coming over.
Yeah,
and
I love that.
You know, it was more organic, it was more natural, it was more human, I think.
Yeah. But that's going back to what we've been kind of alluding to, right? Like, sex dolls are just a funny way of phrasing it. But like, honestly, like that sense of presence that Tom and I bring to like this conversation and all the ones, that's what I feel is like kind of chipping away, right? And like, once you break that presence, then you also break a lot of the other things that come out of being present. I mean, meditation is first and foremost being present. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't do that, then you can't even really start meditating, right? Like, it's sort of like a precursor, right?
All right, Matt, I think it's Saturday in Australia now.
Yeah,
so
goodbye. All right. Harmony, we're going to link to everything. We'll send you all this when it's done. If you ever want to remember you came by, we'll have that video for you.
She's going to go talk to her husband and be like, I don't know. They went off on sex dolls for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know.
He'll love to listen to this, actually.
Yeah. He's like, what was that website again? I just want
He's going to be short lines here for us. He's going to be like, you guys aren't okay.
That's hilarious. Okay. Well, listen, all right. Have a great day and evening and everybody, and see you next time.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Be subversive, irreverent.
Health is wealth, but you knew that.
Everybody knows that.
But so is following us on social media at Irreverent Health. And check out our website for more exclusive content at irreverenthealth.com.
Oh, I like this.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Irreverent Health.